appreciate the time. Thank you.
Now, for people who want to know what uncensored is, uncensored's my way of showing people that even if we're in a disability, I can still overcome controversy, reach my goals in life. At the same time, turning myself into a perfect example for people out there, deaf, blind, or in a wheelchair, that you should never label yourself, and you should prove to people you can still amount to something. And basically, it's just all about making a statement. Now, with that being said, it's a half-hour, 45-minute conversation. You can say anything you want, curse if you want to, and it's completely whatever you want to do.
Okay.
So, starting off, what can you tell me about yourself?
Well, my name is Scott Churchson. I'm a 39-year-old lifetime resident of New Jersey. I'm 5'11", like long walks on the beach, moonlit dinners, that sort of thing. Prior to this, actually, it was 7.5 years as a financial advisor, and I've been in the acting and occasional stunt work industry for a little over 4.5 years now. Prior to even a financial advisor, I was in the IT field. Basically, I was the guy you'd call up and yell at when your computer stopped working, and even though I've been out of the industry for a few years, I still find myself doing that for a lot of people because they still run into problems, and they remember me being that guy. So I've had a few jobs across the years.
Now, for what type of computers were you referring to? Apple, Windows?
Predominantly Windows. Some Linux, some Unix back then, but even nowadays, for the most part, I usually get questions about Windows or, Chrome, IE, Firefox, various things like that. Even the other day, I had a question on something. I don't remember what it was, but it's still one of those things that they just kind of figure, okay, you're the person to go to. So.
Well, by the way, do you have a copy of Microsoft Office I can borrow from you?
Actually, believe it or not, I don't use Office. I use a stunt program called, it's a free Office. It's a free version of Office, but it's actually a Sun Microsystem version. So, sorry, no.
You mean Kingsoft, right? It's a Kingsoft. That's it's like Office.
It's Open Office is the name of it.
There's another one. If you go to download.com, it comes up as Kingsoft. They do the antivirus, and they also do the. Everyone has their own thing.
Basically, yeah. I just didn't want to deal with the registration and the paying version of it, so I'd rather have an open source version. So I figured, okay, and I've been using it the last few years, and it's been fine for me.
I'm more of a PC. Actually, I'm more of an Apple person, but when I have to, I use PC. It would be nice if Windows had their own iMovie, but they don't.
They have Windows Movie Maker, but from my experience, Movie Maker is it's a free program, but it's worth the money you spent on it. We'll put it that way. Oh, it's awful.
Yeah, it's really bad.
Yeah, so I try not to use it when I don't have to. YouTube, I think, actually has a better editing program than Microsoft does, just on a YouTube video.
That's true. Now, I'm going to ask you a lot of easy questions, a lot of hard questions, and you can ask me anything you want in return, so fair is fair. Now, I'm looking at your LinkedIn, and it says you do voiceovers. So what, for video games, for cartoons, what got you interested in that?
I've always had an interest in voice work. Even when I was a kid, I was always that one kid that always did the various voices growing up in elementary school. My mouth kind of got me into and out of a lot of trouble as a child. So for me, being able to do the voices and things like that, sometimes helped diffuse a situation. But nowadays, yeah, I mean, occasionally I've done a commercial here and there. I did something for MTV at one point. I've done some various flash videos, some videos that have actually won some awards along the way. But yeah, that's been a part of it too.
Now, like for example, what type of commercials have you done have you done cartoons?
Nothing mainstream. Nothing basically that's on television right now. I've done some independent stuff, but I've never done anything in the major movies. I've never done anything in the major TV shows. I'd like to. But for right now, a lot of that stuff is actually done out west, both in LA and in Vancouver. It's starting to come a little bit more into this area, into New York. I know they're starting to build some major studios over in Staten Island and places like that. So it's starting to happen here. but I think it's still probably going to be a good year, 2 years out.
Well, how would you be interested in narrating? If someone offered you a narration opportunity for a book, would you do it, or are you more just doing for fun?
For fun. Voice work, basically a lot of the stuff for books on tape, narration, things like that, that's like an audible.com kind of a thing. I have not really done anything like that. I know a bunch of people that have. Mine is more on the cartoon, the lighthearted kind of a thing. Some YouTube videos have done some stuff in that too, where they want something that is not the book on tape or book on, CD, MP3 kind of a setup. But it's been more of the lighter stuff, the voices, the accents, the goofier things.
The reason I asked is I'm working on a book, I'm trying to figure out if I want to do a normal book or I want to do an audiobook. So if you're interested in making some extra cash, I'd love to work with you.
Sure, I appreciate it. I mean, I have a home studio already, so it's just a matter of actually just going ahead, going forward with it, and just probably recording a little bit, giving you a little bit of a feel for what it is that you're looking for, and then just kind of working towards the middle. But yeah, I can do something like that.
Well, after this
industry, so there's no real restrictions on me.
Well, after the show, I just like running it past you.
Yeah, sure. We can definitely talk about that. Sure, thank you.
Anytime. Now, you mentioned you are a stunt guy. Was there ever times where you broke your neck, broke your arm, and where a stunt didn't go as planned?
Yes to the last part. I've had a lot of cases where basically things have gone awry last minute. I've never broken anything, thankfully. I did sprain something once. I sprained a knee, actually, on Dark Knight Rises. If you saw the movie, if you saw the end of it where you see, all the cops and the thugs running at one another, there was a little bit of an accident that happened towards the end of the first day where a guy fell down and rolled into my knee. It was an accident. It happens, but it kept me out of commission for a little while. I've had a couple of things here and there where I've been kicked, knocked down, elbowed, things like that, shoved. Well, one time almost down a flight of stairs, but you know what? Before this, I sold life insurance on commission, so everything's better by comparison. And it gives me stories, it gives me memories that are really, really awesome to have, so I don't mind it.
All right. Now, you mentioned Dark Knight Rises. What other movies have you been a stunt person for?
I did some work for the Liam Neeson movie Nonstop. I did some stuff for, Boardwalk Empire. I did a little bit of work like that. There was a TV show called The Nick that was on a Steven Soderbergh 10-episode thing. I did some basic work on that as well. Some of it was actually just pure background work, where it was just NYPD 1900. I've always loved period stuff. I love things like, for Boardwalk Empire, for that. For Barry's stuff that actually takes me back to an era, and getting a feel for what it was like to live at that period. And a lot of times when you've been doing something like this, day in and day out in that era, you really feel like you're part of it. You kind of forget a little bit that you could be filming something in 1900 Brooklyn, living blocks and blocks 1900 Brooklyn, and then suddenly turning a corner and it's present day. And it's a little bit of a weird adjustment, both going into that environment and out of it again, because of the fact that you get used to just being, around the horse and carriage and, the lights and the whole setup and everything like that, the wardrobe, the people, the attitude and the mindset of people back in that era versus today.
Well, you bring up a good point. Now, say hypothetically, there's this, this is true, there is a fan-made parody of Titanic 2. What if, supposedly, what's his name, Leonardo DiCaprio dies, but in the second one, they find him, and they bring him back to life, and he's trying to process everything that happened in 100 years, from, say, 1912 to 2012. Do you think that would be a little culture shock for someone who was frozen at expanded animation to be alive today?
I don't know if they'd be able to really handle something like that. I think it would depend on the character of person. I think it was somebody like Jack from Titanic. I think it would take some work, but I think he can. He was the kind of guy that was very laid back. I think he can probably roll with it. I think there might have been other characters, like, for example, Billy Zane's character, who probably would have killed himself. Of course he did at the end of the movie. Anyway, spoilers for anybody who saw it. Sorry about that. But I think it would be something that, if it was somebody like Jack's character, yes. I've heard a theory, and actually it was a cool fan theory, that Jack was just a figment of Rose's imagination. Where it was something that she had just created in her own mind, and was just telling the story right before the end of the movie, for the movie itself, which I always thought was kind of a fun idea.
So basically, she was mentally disturbed.
I guess it's a way of putting it. Yeah. But I think I don't think James Cameron had that idea, but I think it's a neat little fan idea to have somebody say, okay, Jack was just really never there at all. So all of the stuff where you see her, at the front of that Titanic, the King of the World stuff, it was just her. And it's an interesting little concept, but no, I don't think that's what James Cameron had in mind.
Now, it's funny we should be talking about Titanic. There was there's two things. The first one is there are companies and countries who want to rebuild the Titanic, or the new generation. And how you feel about that? That's the first question. And do you really think, and I know this, but I'd like to hear your opinion, the whole cruise line of following the destination of the Titanic to England, the same path they took, all that's haunted, but do you think that's, right now it's a graveyard, but do you think it's really haunted, or that shit just happens?
I don't know. Here's my feeling on this kind of thing. I know enough to know that I don't know everything.
Right.
And I know this is not really the answer specifically that you're looking for. I'm sorry. But could it be haunted? Maybe. My feeling is, if we don't really know everything that's on this planet, right, what's going on right now, we're discovering new species, we're learning about all these kind of things. How can we say for certain what is and what isn't? And that's generally my philosophy, not to get too far off topic, but when it comes to alien life. If we're still figuring out what's on this planet, we're discovering new species in the Amazon, and we're finding out all these things, especially even on like a scientific level, where we're discovering things, and things that we never even knew existed before. Who knows? Maybe, there was a belief, I believe it was Einstein, that said that time is an illusion. So what if what we view as ghosts is nothing more than just a viewpoint into something in a different parallel time, parallel universe of some sort, where time might be an illusion and everything is happening simultaneously. So this conversation is happening, and right now something behind me is happening in 1943, we'll say, for argument's sake, that I can't see at this moment.
Because it's moving so fast, right?
What's that?
No, I didn't mean to interrupt, but because it's moving so fast that it's on a different frequency.
On a different wavelength? Yeah, I don't know. We're getting kind of esoteric with a lot of this stuff, a little ethereal maybe. But like I said, the bottom line is, I don't know. And I think part of the joy of learning is knowing the fact that the more you learn, the more you have to learn. And not being able to, once you have an answer for something, to be able to say, okay, this opens up these new questions, we can learn some more stuff over here as well. And I think that's what makes discovery fun. And I think in this arena, we don't have enough information, and that's what keeps us going, learning more.
No, that's true. And while on the subject, how do you feel about a Bermuda Triangle? And do you think black holes are white holes or doorways to other dimensions?
Bermuda Triangle, we'll start with that one first. I don't know if that's built up as the big thing it really is. Again, could be wrong, okay being wrong. I don't think that, it has a lot of mystique to it, it has a lot of myth to it, but I think it's just something that is just more fan service, more just something where it's not that tabloid based, but something that people want to believe and want to, hope is real. I don't really think it is necessarily, but again, I could be wrong. From the standpoint of black hole, things like that, yeah, I could see it as being something where, it's a doorway to a different part of the universe, a shortcut, if you will. I'll use the movie, for example, Event Horizon, Sam Neill, Lawrence Fishburne, where you learn to actually be able to go through a hole in space and come out the other side, or come out in a different spot. I think it could be something like that. Gunn could be wrong on this, but I've always been kind of intrigued by that. I've always been kind of curious to find out, okay, what is out there? What else do we don't know yet? And black holes do fall into that, sure.
All right. Now, like I said, it's a normal conversation, so is there anything you want to ask me, or?
I guess, first of all, how you doing?
Pretty good, yourself?
No, not bad. I guess, in your case, how'd you get started with the show? I think, congratulations on, I think you said episode 113 now?
Yes.
That's impressive. That is very impressive. How did you get started with it? How have you managed to do that many episodes? And has there been anybody on your end of the fence that basically you've been kind of like, I am really glad actually I interviewed them, or on the opposite side of it, I really wish I hadn't?
Well, I'll tell you the long story about it. I used to work in retail, and I worked over at this one company for 4 years, and they knew the fact I had a learning disability when I was hired, but they didn't like the fact I did have a learning disability, so long story short, they fucked me over. It's basically pretend you're this girl. We're buddies and everything, and then you would go in the back, Keith's stalking me, Keith's doing this, he's doing that. I would go in the back, get yelled at, go back on South Floor, we're just fucking with you, we're having fun with you. So basically that went on and on for a couple of months, and I developed severe panic attacks, and bad enough I had social anxiety, I've had shitty people skills, but that's just added to it. So I got sick, and I didn't want to work in retail anymore. So took a year off, to recover. Went to West Point. I became a custodian. I'm now certified to work anywhere in New York State. And now it's at the same time my brother was doing his thing, my sister was doing her thing. It's like, well, I want to do that too. But at the time it's like, I have a learning disability. You can't go to college, you can't do this, you can't do that. And for the most part of my life, I was using that as a crutch. And because I was using it to hold me back. And one day I just said, fuck it. I'm going to do something that I'm going to turn myself into a perfect example, even do something, attempt to do something, even if it backfires in my face. So I started my own talk show a year and a half ago. And don't ask me why, it was a stupid thing on my part, but it was all phone conversations. And so basically I interviewed people from Mighty Morphin Power Rangers to Dragon Ball Z to Spider-Man, and I got up to 72, and it still gets to me. They say, why aren't you as big, or wink wink, bigger than you portray yourself to be? Why don't you have sponsors? And at the same time, they were saying, would you like to help me with that? No, if you can't figure it out yourself, then I guess it's not meant to be. But then they were saying to me that, what is your audience? What is your demographics? I have no idea. And at the same time, they were saying, alright, well, word of wisdom, do it over and do it right. So I did. And luckily, I came up to 113 thanks to you. And we're doing it this way. Even though there are still people criticizing me, there's a better way to do what you're doing, but I don't know.
An opinion.
The people are never happy. And the other thing was, did I ever interview people who I kind of wish I didn't? And before I get to that, there were people who I interviewed the first time, from Spider-Man and Mighty Morphin Power Rangers and everything. Half of them said yes, and they're good friends of mine, like Kurgan Mayhem, and who was Goldar, Ron Reisman, who did the music, But people who like I thought we became friends because I do this to prove a point and make friends at the same time. And there was like, well, I only did the interview at the time because I thought it would benefit me or it would help me. And they said, no, once was enough. And the other times, to answer your question, did I ever interview people that I kind of regretted? Unless I didn't. Yes, there were a handful of those. But,
games, obviously, I understand that. But I figure you probably have a few stories on your end of the fence of just things that were probably really funny or really weird. Like I said, after 113 episodes, you probably have a great deal of material that you can work with. If for any reason you decided to say, for example, to do stand-up comedy, you probably have enough stories on that side to keep the audience entertained.
No, that's true.
That's true.
Now, like, one thing about phone conversations that kind of irritated me was because you didn't see who you were talking to. A lot of people couldn't get behind that. But at the same time, I would say I interviewed a lot of, I don't know, and not just, I interviewed a lot of individuals that weren't all there. So basically, I'll give you a perfect example. I interviewed the actor who did Lord Zed from Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. Nice guy. Nothing to take away from him. He's a great guy. But when, besides talking about acting, I said, what do you think about gun control? What do you think about healthcare? Fine. Great. And it's kind of like, okay, well, what do you think about life in space? And what do you think of this? Fine. Great. Beginning, I was sitting there and I was like, okay, it's been 10 minutes, 15 minutes at most. How can I get this guy to continue to talk? And it happened a couple times to a couple people, and it's kind of like I'm doing something wrong, but now...
You got nothing to work with.
Right.
No give or take or anything like that. You're getting one-word answers, and after a while, you run out of questions to ask.
That's true.
But at least you got them. That's something, though. It's good for your personal reel if you ever decided to do something like that, too.
It's funny, a lot of people I interviewed the first time over the phone interviews, I call it my pre-interviews. I threw the CD out, I threw the book out because I said, would you like to do it over? I'm doing it more professionally. No, once was enough, or you already interviewed me. Yes, we did do a practice interview, but now we can do it over and make it more professional, and I would like to have you on here. Yeah, well, I don't have the time for it, or I'm not really interested. And it's kind of like, why am I wasting my time trying to talk to you then?
Yeah, I understand. And I see that a lot on my side, too, where people don't realize actually the opportunities they may be missing out on. Because you never know, at least, from my side of the standpoint, my perspective on this, you never know who can feed you in a business. You never know who can make a connection for you, build rapport. I mean, one of the biggest, most influential people that I've ever worked with came because of a Craigslist ad. I'm one of the two people that actually was part of the Northeast Film Festival in Teaneck, and that came about because a little over 4.5 years ago, I actually saw his post on Craigslist looking for non-union background people to be zombies in his movie. And just staying in touch, building rapport. I've been fortunate enough to be tied to the Hoboken International Film Festival. He had me in a film opposite Brian O'Halloran of Clerks fame. Brian was kind enough to kill me in the film. I've met people like Burt Young, Eric Roberts, Joyce DeWitt because of him, Harry Lennox from Man of Steel, currently The Blacklist, who I've always been a big fan of, was actually at the Northeast Film Festival, got an award from it. That came about because of the connection that I had built and the relationship that I had built from what was seemingly something that wasn't going to go anywhere. And it's funny because a lot of people that were part of it are never around anymore. You don't know what happened to them. You never hear from them anymore. Because I don't think they necessarily saw what was there. And maybe I just got lucky. Sometimes you just strike, a little bit of pay dirt on certain things. But I guess maybe because of the fact I was a financial advisor, I learned how to build connections, build rapport, and never really try to dismiss anybody because I don't think they're going to feed me. Because like I said, you never know who's going to feed you for one. And you never know what kind of a rapport can happen, what kind of business can be built, what kind of relationship can be built. So in this case here, when people are telling you, oh, I did it once, I want to do it again, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, they may not be catching into where you're going, and the interview isn't just for now, but it's also for later. And that's where I think the interview may not just be for now, but it might be for later. And I think that's what sometimes, a lot of times, people miss out on.
No, I agree with you, and I got other people say, oh, I think you're doing just like a great thing, but I really want nothing to deal with it, or I'm not interested. And it's kind of like you're talking from on both sides of your mouth. Is it a really good thing that I'm doing, or don't you want to have a part of it?
I'm sorry, I lost. Say that again?
No, I got people say, well, you're doing a great thing and keep up the good work, but I really want nothing to do with it. So it's kind of like, well, which one is it? Am I doing a great thing? And if I am, why don't you want to have anything to do with it?
I know, and it stings a little bit too, because, maybe people, look at you on the surface and think, okay, well, this is all he's going to amount to be. But you hear stories of, I don't remember the name, I wish I could. My mother would know, if anything. But there are people out there, there's a motivational speaker that I think has like no legs and only one arm, and he talks about overcoming adversity and appreciating what you have. And people like that, who overcome those kind of challenges and still have a great life and have a, great family, great smile, overcome that. But those people probably got a lot of people on the way saying you should give up, it's not for you, you're going to fail, I'm just trying to protect you, and things like that can be extremely damaging when you're going through it. But having a good support system and having people really believe in you, and being proud of you, and for what it's worth, in my case, my parents have pictures of some of the stuff I've done on the refrigerator wall, which is really kind of funny, but very flattering at the same time. And that kind of empowers you, and it kind of makes you feel proud of what you're doing, because you know what it basically makes them smile, makes them proud of you. And I think that's where, when people talk to you personally, it's like, I'm proud of you, go for it, things like that. How sincere are they necessarily when they're like, I don't have time, I can't do an interview with you, my cat has diarrhea, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And, you know what? They're missing out. Because when you're big, they're suddenly going to suck up to you.
Now, I give you a perfect example. A year and a half ago, when I first started, no one thought or no one imagined I would get up to... Are you still there?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Sorry, I guess someone was sending me a message or something. So basically, a year and a half ago, no one would have thought I would have came up with 113 guests. And at the time when I was doing episode 1, episode 2, and 3, all I heard was, oh, you're taking advantage of people, you're manipulating people, you're conning people, you're guilt-tripping in people, and I got all this bullshit. And now, after they're hearing it from random people, making my way out there from the professional circle, hey, have you ever heard of this kid? He's doing a really good thing. Now they're taking it seriously. Oh, maybe he's a good thing. Like, I was interviewed on the L.A. Cooper show. I can send you the link if you're interested. And she said, is your family supportive? And I said, well, I take the fifth on that. And then I said, well, yeah, my mother was, but everyone else says, well, we'll see what it turns into. And, we don't care what you're doing. All we care about is if you don't give out the last name. That's why I changed my last name. And so as long as no cops show up at the door, we don't really care what you're doing. That's the biggest thing. Do whatever you want, but the first time a cop shows up at the door, your ass is on the street. So I was like, okay, thanks for the support.
Well, you know what? It's something anyway. I mean, people a lot of times are just skeptical, and it takes a couple of things here and there, like 113 episodes, or getting, a couple of people from Power Rangers, for example. That just passed, I think, the 20-year anniversary. I think Zed was introduced about 20 years ago, right about now, come to think of it. Things like that give you credibility that catches on with other people later. And that's actually how, they become supportive, because of third-party endorsements, and third-party recommendations and appreciation and things like that gets back to them. So in your case, stick with it, I mean, like I said, you're at 113 right now, which is a very impressive number. Obviously, there's a lot of work on your side of it, uploading the videos, doing whatever kind of editing is involved. So in a lot of ways, it could almost be a full-time job by itself. But that right there, like I said, a lot of credibility for you. So kudos to you.
I appreciate it. Now, wrapping up, do you have any funny stories you would like to share, or any pranks you pulled on people?
Pranks, I will plead, like you said before, I will plead the fifth myself. In my case, well, there is something that I have done. I'll show it to you right now. I have this very bizarre ability to be able to do things like this. What can be a lot of times fun is if you go into the subway in New York City, like this. Or sometimes I'll just do it with just, say, one finger, and I'll act like I broke it, and I'm looking at, like, in a lot of pain. You can see I'm sore. And you just kind of just accidentally leave it out there kind of like this, on a crowded subway, so people kind of catch it out of the corner of their eye. And watching the reaction that comes from that I do enjoy doing. As far as funny stories go, I was fortunate enough to actually work alongside Lloyd Kaufman at one point, president of Troma, Steven Soderbergh with the Nick, Rob Reiner, who's a very nice guy. Even yesterday, for example, Eric Stoltz. Eric Stoltz from, the original Marty McFly, Taya Leone, from Adam's secretary yesterday, doing some background work on it. And it was a nice opportunity to be able to hang out with them. Very, very nice people, very outgoing. Eric Stoltz, I didn't even recognize it was him at first. But it's very interesting because he has a very Adam Savage of Mythbusters kind of look with long hair, but he wears a full suit, full tie, very professional. But they're all easygoing. Like, they laugh, they joke, and they're just regular people. And I think that's really what I get a lot out of this, is the fact that, we build up this mythos about these really high-level celebrities and, how big they are and how powerful they are. But at the end of the day, they're just regular people. And I get a lot of stories from stuff like that, of being able to watch Will Smith shadowbox on Men in Black 3 when he gets into character. Seeing Meryl Streep in action, being able to see, be able to meet, like I said, Harry Lennox of, Man of Steel, the Matrix sequels. Vincent Pastore, actually I have an event with him tomorrow night, benefiting homeless animals at Asbury Park at the Wonder Bar. This has just come about because of the fact that I've learned to build rapport, make connections. Like I said, meeting Eric Roberts, Burt Young, Joyce DeWitt. I'm drawing a blank on a few people. The guy that was George McFly in the Back to the Future sequel, that was a couple of months ago. The guy that played RoboCop in RoboCop 3, that was last week, Robert John Burke. This is the kind of stuff that I enjoy. Like I said, it gives me stories. I get paid pretty solidly for it, which is a nice thing too. They spoil the heck out of you. I mean, food buffet out the wazoo, which is a great thing for a foodie like me. But to be able to be paid to hang out with people like this, to laugh, joke, and realize that they're not people that want to be on a pedestal. They're just people. And I think that gives a lot of stories and a lot of fun to this whole thing that I personally enjoy the heck out of. I had done something actually a few years back for Gramercy Theater, where the finger tricks that you had seen, which the YouTube video that I have has about 840,000 views. It has comments out all over the place. But to be able to perform that, for College Humor Live in front of 700 people, while remarkably terrifying, was probably one of those experiences in my entire life. And that's what I've been able to develop over 4.5 years, is stories. Stories of being able to, learn from people, make connections, and just frankly, a lot of times impress people that actually aren't in the industry, because they always want to know, oh, what are you working on right now? What are you doing? What kind of projects, who are you with? What are they like? And it helps a lot when you've had 370-ish days on set, whatever I've had at this point, that I have no shortage of stories to entertain them. Like I said, that's why I brought it up to you before at 113 episodes yourself, that you have no shortage of stories yourself. And I think that's what makes this, what we do, a lot of fun. And like I said, it's a lot more fun than selling life insurance on commission.
That's true. Now, do you have anything you want to say to your fans out there, or any words of wisdom?
You know what? I think the best way to do it, especially with what's going on right now and everything, is life is 10% what happens to you and 90% how you deal with it. Viktor Frankl, who wrote the book Man's Search for Meaning, Holocaust survivor, said the last of the true human freedoms is the right to choose one's attitude in any given situation. And I think people a lot of times let their circumstances dictate their attitude as opposed to the other way around. And realizing that everything will pass, and understanding that whatever challenges you're dealing with right now and whatever obstacles you're incurring right now will, at the end of the day, actually make you stronger. Because it's not about the adversities you're dealing with. It's your response to it that makes you who you are.